Hello and welcome to the Events Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and each week I talk with event professionals about how they plan, promote, and run their events. Whether you're running small meetups or large conferences, exhibitions, or concerts, we focus on finding actionable tips that you can use straight away. The podcast is sponsored by our ticketing system, EventsFrame. Make the switch from Eventbrite today with our fantastic system with no ticket fees. We've got great integration with all the main payment methods, Stripe, PayPal, or Braintree. And we've got email integrations with most of the email marketing systems such as MailChimp, Zapier, Infusionsoft, Aweber, Drip, and many more. We've got thousands of live events with customers hosting events from small community meetups to large trade shows and conferences. And EventsFrame is especially good for anyone wanting to run multiple events. Check it out today for a free 1-month trial. And if you send me an email at dan@eventsframe.com with the subject line podcast, I'll give you a special secret discount code. So on to today's interview. This was with a guy called Jason Moore, who I've been acquainted with for quite a while, although we've never met in person, because he's got two really good podcasts. One is called Zero to Travel, and one is called Location Indie Podcast. And it's a real interest of mine, the whole location independent business movement. And Jason was fascinating. After college, he started off working with experiential marketing, which honestly was something I've never heard before, but it's basically marketing agencies run events to promote products and services. And it could be something as small as the person in the supermarket, promoting a certain product, through to running large roadshows. He was running drug awareness roadshows across the US. He was running international ones. Obviously, you see the Red Bull cars and things around. But a lot of these events are quite big and they run tours, so it's fascinating. He never wanted to get a regular job. He started off running these events. Through this, he became the tour manager for an up-and-coming rock band, which was really interesting. He started a few businesses, and he always kept the thread of events going through what he did. So now he runs a membership community, and he has meetups. Wherever he goes, he runs meetups. And he also ran a conference in the US, and he's doing it again in Mexico. So really, events have driven everything Jason's done. But it's just really interesting to see somebody's entrepreneurial journey, because I've talked about it before, but there's often kind of a narrative fallacy where a successful entrepreneur will kind of say, I'm here today and these are all the stages that got me here. Whereas if you look at most entrepreneurs, the actual background is a lot of false starts, twists and turns, and it's not kind of a linear progression. And Jason talks about all the different things he's done, which I think will resonate with a lot of people. So it was a really fun chat. We talked for over an hour. So settle down and listen to the interview with Jason. Hello and welcome to the Events Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be talking to Jason Moore, who I've come across online quite a few times. He's got a couple of podcasts that I know about, Zero to Travel, which is a great podcast with kind of travelers and location-independent entrepreneurs and digital nomads and stuff. And then one called Location Indie, which he does with another guy. So Jason, great to be talking to you.
Thanks for having me on. And I mean, you just got me fired up when you said the word events, because I'm super passionate about events.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to be here and chat with you.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Well, let's talk a bit about your background, because like I said, you've got a couple of podcasts. You've also got at least one community of kind of location independent business people, and you run a bunch of events, and you also do some experiential marketing for events, which I want to get into. What does that mean? So it'd be great just to get a bit of a background of what your background is, and then talk about what you're doing at the moment, I guess. So So should we start off with how you started this whole traveling lifestyle and what you did first?
Yeah, sure. Because it ties in with events, and at the time I didn't know it was going to be a traveling lifestyle, Dan. I just thought, hey, here's this funky job that lets me go to a different city every week. I was coming out of college. I had like $20,000+ in debt. And I just wanted to travel. I was trying to save up for the traditional backpacking trip through Europe that a lot of post-college grads, at least in the U.S., take. Or maybe not a lot, but it's something that I heard about. I heard that other people had done it, and when I talked to them, I had gotten really excited, seeing friends' pictures, and just getting really excited about the possibility of being able to travel through Europe. Sounded so exotic, and it was really, at that time, my mindset was so limited, man. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. It was kind of like, oh, okay, I went to college. Maybe I'll get to do a trip like this backpacking trip through Europe or some kind of traveling thing. And then, of course, after that, I'm going to have to, using air quotes here, Dan, go into the real world, right? Because you're not allowed to just keep traveling and have fun, right? That's not like an option. At least I didn't know it was an option at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm from England, and in England, there's a pretty well-trodden path that a lot of people, like a decent percentage of your friends are going to do a year out. It's called a year out after university. And it's interesting because Canadians, New Zealanders, Australians, South Africans, they all do the same thing. Americans, not so much, but you basically, if you're British, you do it. You go to Asia for 3 months, including like India, Nepal, Thailand, Bali probably. You go to Australia for a year where you get your working holiday maker visa for the year. You work there for a year. Then you come back through South Pacific and America, and like everyone does the same thing. I mean, probably a third of my friends from university did that exact same trip, Right. And Americans don't seem to do that much. They maybe do a European trip, or it's not as much of a thing for Americans. Maybe because of the debt, the college debt is the reason, I guess.
I think there are a variety of reasons. You're talking about the gap year. What did you say you guys called it in the UK? Year after?
When I did it, it was like a year out or gap year. People call it. Yeah, year out we would call it, I guess. Same
thing. It's in those cultures that you mentioned, and for some reason it is lacking in the culture in the States. And I think one of the reasons is the big one you mentioned is the college debt and all of the issues surrounding that. And what are the other reasons? I don't know. I mean, there's some, at least growing up for me, I feel like there is some kind of underlying pressure to keep things moving forward in terms of a career path, right? Whatever that's supposed to mean. There's this idea of, okay, you're supposed to get on this ladder and climb it, and we can use all the cliches in the world, but I think everybody gets what I mean. And I don't know if it's a combination of that with the debt and some cultural influences. Maybe, older generations weren't traveling as much, and, maybe some immigrants were coming to America for a better life, and the idea was to be there and build that. Yeah. There's a variety of backgrounds and reasons. America is a very eclectic country, as you know. Yeah. But coming out of that whole melting pot, there is not a gap year culture, which is interesting because there's so much freedom and free thinking in America. I think you see how much art and great pop culture and music and different things comes out of there. But sure. But then like when it comes to this sort of free-spirited travel ideal, it's not non-existent. It certainly exists, but like you said, it's not there. So I didn't have a template for that, and I was coming out in the late 90s, and there weren't all these travel blogs and different things and podcasts and all that stuff either. So to me, it was a pretty sort of scary thing to do, but an exciting thing. So I just wanted to save up money for this trip, and I started applying for travel jobs because I thought, well, instead of just getting a job waitering, maybe I should try to find some kind of traveling job, whatever the hell that meant. Yeah. Unbeknownst to me, there's an entire industry called experiential marketing or event marketing that's essentially having an experience with a brand. So brands will put together, whether it's a sampling program where they're handing out free samples in the street, everybody's experienced that. You're in a big city and all of a sudden you have a pack of, peppermint throat lozenges in your hand, somebody's giving out, or Red Bull, I guess, is one that people know a lot, to, more elaborate type events where it's a brand sponsor and there's, a multitude of different interactive things you can do. Might see that at big sporting games. Like you can go and try to kick the soccer ball through the net, and this is sponsored by Telenor or whatever. So that whole industry I had no idea about. I got faxed a tour schedule to do this charity event for kids. It was a race against drugs. It was to benefit drug prevention charities. And we were going to a different city every week, setting up a racetrack in Kmart parking lots. Wow. If you don't know what Kmart is, it's like Walmart. And we would set up this obstacle course, and kids would race modified lawn tractors with the blades removed, obviously, around this race course. And we would manage this whole event. So essentially we were glorified carnies. That's what we ended up calling ourselves at some point. But we got to tour around and set up this event and see all these different cities. And I did an 8-month tour, and I was able to save money. I think I was making $500 a week and about $30 a day per diem. And I was like, oh my God, like the money's pouring in. This is spectacular.
How are you traveling? Did you have like a tour bus or something? Or were you sleeping in a bus or paying for hotels? Or how does that work?
I have done that before over many years of touring, but on that particular one, they had 2 semi-trailers full of equipment, and they gave us what was called a chase vehicle, which was just a van. And there were 3 of us on tour, and then we would have local volunteers and help that we would manage at each location. So we would travel in the van and just get a hotel and kind of do our work schedule. And then in our free time, just explore these cities.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wow, this money's rolling in. I don't have to pay for gas. I don't have to pay for a place to live. I'm saving up money. This is the coolest thing ever. So after that, I found out there's this whole industry. I started networking, got a couple more gigs, and then I did the solo backpacking trip to Europe the following summer. Then that opened my world to, like you mentioned, there's all these people traveling, and I started chatting with people in hostels and realizing, wow, people are doing this and they're just not going home after 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever. They're doing it for a year. Some of them have been on the road for years. And then I started kind of thinking, why can't I just keep kind of doing this? I keep touring and then save up some money and travel. And this seems like a cool thing. And maybe it goes against, having a traditional career, but let me just kind of follow this for a while because I'm having fun. And I didn't know that was going to turn into a decade of living nomadically and touring.
Interesting. It's really fascinating. I got a funny story. It's fascinating, the tour you did, because when I was 20 or 21, I went to America for the summer. There's a thing called the British University's North America Club, and you could get like a summer visa. I don't know, H111B or something. I don't remember what it was, but you get this. You go to New York and you have like an orientation for a few days, and you get this summer working visa. And me and my friend, we had this what we thought was an amazing idea. Like we'd get to New York and we'd get on a tour for like Guns N' Roses or something, and we'd just tour the US, and that would be how we'd spend our summer. It'd be the perfect plan. We'd make some money, we'd tour with a cool band. And it was like, we did no preparation. So we turned up in New York, and we've like found one record company. I think it was actually Geffen Records, which was Guns N' Roses record label. And then we got there, and we went to the reception, and we were like, yeah, we want to be roadies. And the woman was like, yeah, I can't help you. She just looked at us like disparaging. They didn't even take our numbers down. And we were like, okay, I guess this plan is not going to work very well. But if I'd have known about what you did, maybe we could have tried to do something like that. That's probably a bit more realistic.
But you know what? That's so great that you guys just went that far even.
We did. It worked out in the end. We went down to Ocean City, Maryland, and we worked on a beach there. And then we just traveled around, and back then, they used to have this thing called a Delta Pass, which was super cheap. It was for foreigners, and I think it was $300 for the month, and you could fly anywhere in America for that month on standby. But you almost always got on the flight because if there was only one or two of you, crazy deal. Like I guess they probably don't do it anymore. And we just traveled all around. We just flew around the whole country like for a month. It was crazy.
That's awesome. I bet if you guys went to enough record companies in New York, you probably would have got something like.
Yeah.
I wish there's something about that youthful exuberance and that cavalier attitude where you're just like, oh yeah, we're just going to show up in the United States and we're going to get on tour with Guns N' Roses. That
was exactly what we thought, and it was just, but we gave it up pretty quick. Though that was a bad thing about it. We got one rejection and we were like, oh, it's not going to work.
But I love that. I mean, that's definitely something I think you could. I think more people should do later in life, right? Yeah. Just kind of have that, hey, why not? Just give it a go. I mean, somebody's got to do that job. Somebody's got to be the merch guy for Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And probably we should have aimed a bit lower. But anyway, cool. Let's get back to your story. So you did this tour, and you were looking to travel more. Is that right? After you did this kind of round the US, a drug awareness thing.
Yeah. Again, I think I was still kind of like, oh wow, well this is still going to be one of those once in a lifetime deals. And then I slowly. I got really interested in the idea of continuing to tour. So then I made it a point to start meeting people. And that's when I found a couple other shorter contracts. And then I did the tour, the solo travel backpacking trip through Europe for a couple months that next summer. And then, by then I was just hooked on the touring lifestyle. I'm like, well, I'll just keep touring. I'll just keep finding gigs. And then I will take my time off in between whatever contracts I have and travel overseas.
So you got work. So was all your work in the US, or did you get does this work for multiple country tours, or is it always just US related stuff you did?
It was US related. I did do a gig in Mexico once for a month or during spring break. That was another story, but
that sounds like a good story.
Yeah. I did a summer working as an adventure travel tour guide. I just wanted to try different touring jobs. I did end up working as a tour manager for a rock band and doing that whole thing. I went on tour with them, and we did a van tour through Canada. We lived on the bus and did a played shows all over the US and did like a fall tour with them. So I got to have all of these different touring experiences
can I jump in? How did you get that? Like, I'm curious, how did you get a job? How did you in a situation where you were a tour manager for a rock band?
Yeah. So I was hired by a marketing company. So a lot of people that were the entities that were running these experiential marketing tours were marketing companies, and they would execute them for brands. So people would show up and see, oh, okay, here's, this Bacardi experience going on, but it wasn't run by Bacardi. It was run by an experiential marketing agency who put together all the logistics, built all these custom event pieces, and hired us to go out and put this stuff together and make this show happen. So Bacardi did this music show. And they wanted to have different artists, and it was a music experience where it was a concert essentially, but we had other experiential marketing elements that were a part of that experience. So we were the touring crew. So we kind of fell into this music tour. So it was like a hybrid tour, right? It was experiential marketing meets music.
Yep.
And they decided to make me the talent liaison guy. So I was responsible for coordinating with the other tour managers as like sort of a hospitality person to make sure the artists got to and from the show, kind of get them to the stage to be sure they were getting there on time, and just coordinating everything. And I just started getting to know some of them. And, these artists in particular, Matt and Kim, they're a 2-piece band out of Brooklyn. And Kim asked me one day backstage, she's like, do you tour manage bands? And I was like, I started getting shivers up my spine because I was like, oh my God, I'd love to work with these guys. This would be awesome, because it looked so fun what they were doing. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do? How do I do that? And I'm sure I can do it because I do all these other big events. So she gave me her manager's number, this amazing guy, Kevin, who's been working in music for years. He's got the best stories. And, but he's just such a they were the nicest couple, just super pleasant and sweet and fun. And then Kevin, like one of the nicest, coolest dudes, but like on the surface, just a hard ass, so intense, like intimidating is the word. Like if you ever meet somebody where they're just like, you're just totally intimidated by them, and you just think you get in their presence and you're almost afraid to talk to them. And that's not many people that I feel that way about. And he was one of them. So I called him up, and he just seemed slightly irritated and kind of like, whatever. I think I talked to him for about 5 minutes, and he's just like, no, you don't have enough experience for this. And I was like, wait, hold on. And then I proceeded to talk his ear off for about 15 minutes, I think. And then he just takes a breath and he goes, all right, I'll call you tomorrow. And he was thinking it over. And then he called me. He's like, all right, we're going to give you a shot. So I ended up going on tour with them, and there are a bunch of stories around that tour too, but it was just such a great experience. And I'm glad the music touring kind of came at the end of my touring career, because when you would have known if you went out with Guns N' Roses, Dan, you don't get much time to explore cities. You kind of roll in, you set up, you do your sound check, you have dinner, they play the show, you're there doing whatever you can, you work till 3-4 in the morning, pack up, roll off to the next town, and do it all again.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm super into the music scene anyway. And I've done a little bit of promotional. I actually want to do more of it, but I've just been too busy to really focus on it. Too many things going on, But the bands I've been involved in, which have been on kind of a lower level, bands with record deals, but I mean, that's changing nowadays. But small bands, it's just what you said. They play the show, they pack up, they drive through the night, they get there, they arrive in the morning. Generally, it depends where in Prague, they're generally traveling probably from Vienna. They go to somewhere in Germany, Munich or Berlin, and then they park up, get a few more hours sleep, and then sound check, walk around for a couple of hours, do the show. I mean, so they might get a couple of hours in the afternoon, to really look around,
right? But
not always. Sometimes it's like they don't even get time to sound check if it's a long drive.
Totally, and it was just such a great experience, though. All that aside, I think if I'd done that for years, you can see how people get burnt out. But we're all kind of fresh. So we walk into a venue, and there's all these disgruntled, people that have seen show after show for years and years. Whatever. We're all jolly coming in, and you could see how and they were such a great people. You could see how their mood and their energy or whatever vibe they put off, and just our entire crew would even the most disgruntled roadies or venue workers would kind of get perked up a little, I think, after our shows. It was just great to be around. So when I got offered to kind of keep touring with them on like a world tour, this kind of segues into the next part of my life in a way, even though it took some years. But I decided I was kind of done touring in a way, and I wanted
to. They offered you a world tour, and you decided not to do it. Is that right?
Yeah, they offered to have me keep touring with them, and I thought it was going to be a no-brainer at first, because it was like, who doesn't want to go on a world tour with a rock band that's up and coming? They had done the MTV Music Awards at that point. We'd done like talk shows and different things, had a lot of cool experiences, played Coachella, all this stuff. And it was just so cool and fun to be around, and really got a lot of good feelings around being a part of a show that gave people a lot of joy. And even if I was a small part, it's still nice to be a part of. I love that about events. You're there connecting with people, and it's all happening right there in the moment. It's a beautiful thing. And when I decided to kind of go back to Colorado and just figure out what I was going to do next, it was so much fuel, Dan, because I was like, I gave up going on a world tour with a band, even though it would have been a lot of work, would have been an incredible experience. I have to do something awesome. Yeah. I've been meeting all these amazing artists, seeing all these great shows, doing all these things all around the world over the last 10, 15 years of my life, or whatever it was at the time, I guess 15 years. I can't not do something. I can't just do something plain. I just can't. Like I was too wired up. So it was a really good fuel for me, because I always wanted to start my own thing. But I think at the time when I was touring and saving up money and traveling around, I didn't really want the responsibility. I kind of wanted to just have the travel experiences. And now I was getting to a point in my life where I was ready to start you do more creative work in my job, and you create things basically. So that was a lot of fuel for me.
Right. So what was the next step then? What did you do? What was your next move?
Well, being an entrepreneur looks like a plate of spaghetti, right? People like imagine it like a straight line where you just kind of, maybe there's little squiggles here and there. It was just a whole mess of.
It's interesting because I actually gave a talk about this, something called the Founder Institute, and there was a topic was transitioning from employee to entrepreneur. I'm actually talking another one of our events tonight, actually, but it was interesting because it was just a few people come and share their entrepreneurial story, and my whole thing was like, it's just, I'm going to tell you the truth, because people have this narrative fallacy where they're at a certain point, right? Like now you're at a certain point with these podcasts and certain things that you've got a profile, and you could tell like a story that showed one thing led to another, and it was like this straight line of success. Right. If you look at most entrepreneurs, it's like false starts, people go back and get a job, this messes up, then it's like my entrepreneurial story is like, it's so complicated. When I try to tell it, I can simplify it to make it sound good, but the reality is it's all over the place, Right.
That's why I love podcasting, because you get to talk to people and you get you get down to the heart of it. They don't have those 3-minute media spots where everybody, it's like an episode of the Brady Bunch or your favorite sitcom, whatever. It all gets tied up in a nice bow at the end. Yeah. But that's not the way reality is. And anybody out there that's listening that has tried or is thinking about trying probably has listened to enough podcasts to know that. So, it was the same with me. I mean, I went back to Colorado. I was in a long-term relationship, but we broke up, and that was a really hard part of my life. At the same time, I was working an outside sales gig for a liquor company. I was also doing some marketing contracts before then, where I was out at bars at night handing out free drinks and things, like something I was not excited about doing at all. Just trying to figure out how to make the transition from being on the road and living nomadically to being in one place and finding work that I enjoyed, and also starting something that I was excited about that I could. But
it sounds like you weren't very money focused. It sounds like you didn't do what most people did, what I did, in fact, in the early days. Just go and get a job, find a good graduate training scheme. You knew you wanted just to go out, meet people, have fun, travel. Like, you didn't seem like you had any interest in getting like a regular job.
Not really at that point, but I was fortunate because of the way touring works. Like I said before, you are able to save money because you're not paying a mortgage, you're not paying for gas, you're not, all the regular expenses that people have are covered because you're living on the road and they're paying for it. Yeah. So whether you're living on a tour bus or in hotels or whatever, it's not out of your pocket. So you're able to basically spend your per diem and save most of your salary, and you add that up over some years. So that allowed me to, be able to buy a condo in a place that I loved, and, still have regular life things, even though I thought I think when I started, I thought, well, if I go down this path, I see all my friends climbing this corporate ladder. I just thought that's what you're supposed to do. And, with touring, I mean, it did top out. And that was one of the other reasons I knew I needed to move on, not because I needed to climb something, but you learn so much, but then was starting to get repetitive lessons, and when you're a tour manager, that's kind of as high as you can go. I mean, you can tour manage bigger things, but bigger things are more of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Too,
It's true.
So I just
and
wanted
not always
to
that much more money as well. That's the thing. Things like.
Yeah. I mean, if you're like a tour manager for U2 or some bigger bands, those guys and gals can make really, really good livings. But it's also, I just didn't want to, I just wanted to create something and do something on my own, but it took many more years to kind of get that going as well.
What was your first entrepreneurial venture then? What was the first thing you did that wasn't kind of working for someone else?
I tried a bunch of things, but I think I had some pretty heavy imposter syndrome. So if things started happening, I sort of tapered off. I remember, it used to be pretty hard to get websites online too. It wasn't as easy as it is now. I got a website up and pieced together some logo for a green events company. That was something I was going to do, and nobody was really doing it. So I actually started getting some inquiries, which was weird. I don't know how. And then I kind of was like, well, wait a minute. I don't think I want to do this. Then I had this idea for an app because I was working in the spirits industry. So I thought, well, there should be an app that tells you like where the best happy hours are all the time. I'm sure there is one now. I was going to call it Happy Hour. So I put together this whole spreadsheet. I was going to do like Denver, Boulder, and kind of test market that area and then try to do a nationwide thing. So I met some guy at a startup meetup, and he was an app designer, and he was supposed to build it, but he kind of built the beginning stages of it. And then I did like 3 weeks of work on the spreadsheet, and then he just didn't hold up his end. And so instead of finding somebody else, I just kind of gave it up. So I was doing, what a lot of entrepreneurs do, which is just sort of floundering around.
Sure.
But I'd always had this idea. It got me really excited when people would ask me about travel, and they would ask me either for advice or different things. I really loved sharing advice that could help people travel if it was something they wanted to do. If they expressed interest in doing it and wanting to figure out how to do it and change their lives so they could do it, that got me really excited, and it's something that always got me excited. So I kind of went back to
Have you traveled much at this stage? I mean, obviously you're based in Colorado, so have you kind of done trips, or have you lived abroad at this point?
Well, this is like, after 15 years of touring and traveling overseas, and all I'd done was travel for 15 years. So I got really excited about the idea of starting a podcast or starting something, writing a book or doing something that was geared towards helping people travel. And that's when Zero to Travel was born. And then I'd been talking about a podcast for a while, and somebody in my mastermind, I owe her a big credit. She was just finally like, dude, you've been talking about doing this podcast thing for like a year and a half. Just freaking do it already.
Yeah.
So I did, and that was over 5 years ago at the time of this recording. So
now that's fascinating. Obviously, I want to get some free podcast consulting off you out of this call. How long did it take you to really get traction with the podcast? And did you do like a weekly publishing schedule, or did you just keep it ad hoc in the beginning?
In the beginning, I was doing every other week, but then I realized quickly I need to do weekly because iTunes features you on if you get lucky, they feature on New and Noteworthy, and then you're able to pick up new subscribers and build your base. I was really fortunate because I think in retrospect, I came out of the gates pretty strong because I did get featured. There was nobody really doing a podcast like mine in the travel space.
Sure.
It was resonating. It was like this perfect confluence of, things happening. And I remember just kind of being blown away that, oh my gosh, like 300 people listened to this episode. This is like a real thing. There's people out there listening to this. This is crazy. And I just started it just for the passion of sharing all the conversations I had traveling around the world with travelers that added value to my life, and thinking, wow, if people that wanted to travel could hear this, if we were able to share these conversations, then this could really help people.
Sure. And
that was the idea. There was no business agenda with starting the podcast. It was more of just sharing cool things, and certainly it would be part of Zero to Travel, and I wanted to build some kind of presence online, but I wasn't super strategic about, I'm going to use this podcast to deepen my relationship with people that are it was just like really from the heart, like I want to do this thing to share these conversations and to help people. So
sure. Yeah, cool. So this was a side project, and you're still doing the experiential marketing stuff, I guess. Did you transition the podcast into a business in terms of doing coaching and a community and things like that? Was that the next step?
Okay, well, yeah, I kind of skipped one big thing. So the first online business I had that actually made me money was for the experiential marketing industry. It was a website I had called Event Exchange, and basically there are all these custom vehicles and custom equipment that's built for these experiential marketing tours. And I always kind of hated the waste that was involved. And I also thought, wow, some of these vehicles, like there's a truck that somebody spent $1 million turning into a stage and, setting up these displays and all these things. And they go on tour for 2 or 3 years. And then it's just sitting in what I would refer to as the promotional marketing graveyard, where you go to these fabrication shops and there would just be all these vehicles littered around this parking lot that were just worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I thought, well, this should be like an eBay type thing for this. So I tried to do this whole, after reading the 4-Hour Work Week and all this, I tried to do this whole super complicated sort of automated messaging system thing. And I was like, this is so stupid. I wasted, I think, $4,000 or $5,000, and then I just ended up building a WordPress listing site off of a Woo Themes thing for like $500, and I just listed everything manually. I actually started the business as an email thing. I just got all my contacts together and I started letting people know it was happening. And I said, hey, if you got anything to list, send it to me. I'll put it out in this email newsletter. So I was generating interest before the website launched even, and people were into it. So I launched the website and started advertising these vehicles. And it took about 18 months until we brokered our first vehicle between agencies. Somebody bought one and we took a commission and negotiated the deal and everything like that. So that sort of coincided with, at the same time, I was doing business development as a location independent entrepreneur, but I was working full time doing business development for a staffing company, leveraging my contacts in the event space. So that was my full-time gig. The event
Was that a remote job? For that?
That was remote. So that's when I started being a digital nomad.
Yeah.
And then I was doing sort of the event thing on the side because it sort of tied in with all my business development conversations anyway. It was non-competitive as well. So I talked to the guy whose business I was building. I was like, hey, this is something I'm working on. I was just honest with him. It doesn't compete like, I'm going to bring it up sometimes. So was trying to build that. And then on the double side was the zero to travel stuff.
That's cool.
And then
I think it's good that you had the regular income as well. A lot of people really underestimate that, because everybody wants to be the sort of great entrepreneur who goes out and makes money. But if you've got like a guaranteed income and you can work and you've got enough free time, then that's a great way to start any kind of business, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And after working crazy hours, I sort of reconnected with who's now my wife at the time. So I was living in Norway for 3 months at a time, but it was tough to work the U.S. business hours and Norwegian time. And so I really wanted to transition out of that and have my own thing. And then it all happened basically, I think it was 1.5 or 2 years in. I was just, we started a bundle sale, did really well on that, flipped a vehicle, and like a whole bunch of things happened in 1 month. And I think I had a goal of making like $40,000 in a month or something. And I think if you took like a 30-day snippet, I like actually achieved that.
That's great.
And I was like, holy crap. If I even though that only happened one time, I'm like, if I can do that one time, even if I can't do that every month, not even close to that, but I could probably make that happen again. Right.
Is it quite like a big, like, sort of, let's say the vehicle sells for $100,000, you take, say, 10%. So is it like a lot of work, but it's a big chunk of money when a vehicle sells? Was that kind of how it worked?
I thought it would be a bigger chunk of money.
Right.
I thought I'd be flipping a lot of vehicles, but it didn't end up going that way. And I had to shut down the business. I really thought it was going to take off. But, I think, I think I did a couple 5-figure things, but like low 5 figures, nothing crazy, nothing like life-changing stuff.
Sure. So most of your money was still coming through your sales, your remote sales position you were doing as well.
Business development stuff. Absolutely.
Cool. So what was next? That's an interesting transition. So
then it was, just getting zero to travel going. And then I hooked up with this guy, Travis, who hosts a podcast as well. We both met at a conference. This is where events come in again. We met at a conference called the World Domination Summit run by Chris Gilbo. And, I was just like, hey, you're from Philly too? Oh, you have a travel podcast too? And we just started talking, and I came to him with this idea for this bundle sale called the Paradise Pack. It ended up being called, where we took the best products in online business and travel and put together like one educational bundle for like 1 week only. And
so he had an existing podcast. You met, and then you agreed to work together on the podcast.
Yeah, well, we agreed to do this bundle sale, so we did it. And this was around the same time. This was part of sort of the magical month where like sort of everything came together, and we did really well on the bundle sale. I flipped the vehicle. I made some commissions from my job, and then I was getting married like a month or two later, and I just called my buddy who I was working for at the time. I'm like, dude, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm sorry. I just like the switch flipped, And so I did that. So we ended up doing this bundle sale. It worked. And then we were like, oh, we're going to do this again. And then we were like, oh, well, we're doing all this work online and we're super lonely. We're so excited we get to chat with each other because we have somebody to talk to about all this stuff. And I had my mastermind group also, but it was a very small circle of people that we could kind of talk to about this.
Yep.
And then we realized also it was sort of the same problem for the people that got all the educational bundle. They now had everything they needed to dive into, to be location independent, to at least get the skills to figure it out. But they didn't have any support or anybody to talk to. So then we decided to start the Location Indie community because we wanted to connect with other people and we wanted to connect other people so they didn't have that issue of just kind of, it's really hard to work through things on your own. You need the sounding boards, you need the motivation, you need the accountability. And that was the intention behind the community. And then when we opened it up, I think we had like 50 people join the first time we opened it. We're like, oh, okay, the other people feel the same way. Like this validates our instinct because we're living this life. We know how lonely it is, and other people want to connect too. So it just started taking off from there.
Cool. I want to come back to this community, but first of all, I want to ask, because I'm really curious about the World Domination Summit, because I thought about going a few times.
Yeah.
Not for a couple of years. I was really into the idea of going, but then I had mixed feelings from looking at it online. On one hand, it looked like a lot of people who were like, really doing stuff. And then on the other hand, it looked like a lot of people who were maybe just dreamers or, wanting to get themselves fired up, but they were never going to do anything. And that's the reason I didn't go. And tell me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't sure if it really was. I don't need to hang around with successful people, but I like to talk with people who are doing stuff, getting things going. And I wasn't sure if that was the audience. I'm curious how you found it.
Yeah. Well, I found Chris's work, The Art of Nonconformity blog, I think. So I went to the very first World Domination Summit. Right. It's about 8 years in now. So, and I've been to a couple of them, but pretty early on. So I can't speak to what the event is right now. And certainly, like anything, events change and dynamics change and communities change and all that type of stuff. But it was really this non-conference-y event that was cool, that was built around this idea of community, and it was really a community of people doing stuff and making things happen, whether they were just in the early stages or a little bit further along. And for me, it was just what I needed at that time. And I was probably somebody that you're talking about, where I was kind of not looking for inspiration, but just looking to connect with other people doing things and kind of trying to figure it out.
Sure.
But there certainly were people there that were doing things in various stages. So, I think the tagline is, community, adventure, and service, which was 3 things that really resonated with me. And I just got so many friends out of that community. I know other people have, and people from that community have gone on to do a lot of great things. I mean, I think Nathan Barry, who founded ConvertKit, he was part of that mix and early on, and other people, I could name a bunch of people that I know that have gone on to do really big things.
That's cool.
And that kind of all met through WDS. So really original idea for an event, I think, early on. Now these things seem pretty common, these types of events, but then there wasn't really anything like this.
That's true. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how people come on and off your radar. Because I used to read his blog a lot. I read it. I bought a couple of his books even, but I reckon in the last 2 years, I haven't even seen anything he's done. It's just funny. And that's probably because in the old days, there wasn't many people doing this kind of thing, and that's probably why I was focused on it. But now there's a ton of different people doing it. You've got to really stand out, I think. Yeah,
totally. I mean, there's certainly more people sharing it too,
Cool. So let's get back to your community. So you started a community. That's how did that go? Like, I guess you're charging some kind of subscription model and having a forum and meetups and stuff. Is that how?
Yeah, originally it was a forum. We've changed it a couple times because we were always trying to find the right platform to connect people. And we're now on Mighty Networks, which is you can have kind of your own private social network.
Right.
So we have our own private social network there, and then we have a content area with training, and we have brought in different experts every month for the past years. So there's just a ton of training videos in there on various subjects, online business and travel related. I mean, I think the thing that makes our community unique is it's very much focused around lifestyle business and travel, and travel being sort of that thing we're all building everything else around, right? Yeah. So we really do work to incorporate the travel element of that. It's not just like an online business community, but sure. But yeah, so it's really about accountability and bringing people together. And now we have people doing. I love when I go into the network and see, hey, here's like 5 people that just met up in Minneapolis. Like, I had no idea. And they were just like, there's a picture of them hanging out, or like That's people cool. meeting up all over. And then we started doing our own community gathering. So we did our first one in Denver, and we're doing one in Mexico in a couple months.
Let's talk about that. How did you get to do your first meetups? I guess so your first meetups you organized were for Location Indie, not for Zero to Travel podcast. Is that right? Yeah.
I mean, I've done meetups before where, I'll send an email out to my list like, hey, we're all going to go meet at this brewery in Boulder. If anybody listens to the show and is on this email list and gets this, come and hang out, And we have a bunch of people come and hang out. So sort of informal. But the first formal thing we did with our community where we sold tickets and everything was in Denver as a DenX. It was a Denver experience. And we had about 30 people come to Denver over this last fall. And we did some workshopping together and travel stuff together, which is what we love, kind of mixing business and travel. So we decided to do that again, and we're doing it in Mexico in a couple months. Actually, 2 months.
Was it just a meetup? Were you selling tickets, or was it just a free meetup for your members to support the community?
No, we did sell tickets because we wanted to have the commitment. We didn't want to be casual. We wanted to rent a co-working space, do like whiteboard stuff and workshop stuff. We wanted to have some surprises. So we bought everybody tickets to a baseball game. So we went to a baseball game together. We did, prizes, and we rented out a brewery and had a welcome party and different things like that. So we needed to have a commitment to people coming. Although as much as I love sort of the holistic idea of, let's just all agree to meet up and we're all just going to show up and hang out in a park or something, I think it takes the investment for people to commit, and then we can really see, all right, what can we build around this, I
did a blog post on that. Like if trying to work out the dropout rate for free events is hard, but it's really high. I mean, I've done free events where as much as 80% of people didn't turn up, Whereas if people pay even $10 for an event, they'll almost always come to it.
Yeah, totally. It's just, you got some skin in the game, right? Yeah. So, and we have just done that for our community. So we just, again, wanting to bring people together in real life and get people that are interacting in the social network and online and on the Zoom calls and all the stuff that we do monthly. All right, we see these faces on the computer. Let's use the computer as a tool and get together in real life and then really solidify those relationships.
That's cool. So why did you choose Mexico then? What was the reason? Because a lot of people doing events in Asia, but there's a few. I actually talked to a guy the other week, really interesting guy who runs a big event in Acapulco called Anarchapulco for anarchists. They have 4,500 people come. Really, really interesting guy. But why did you choose Mexico? What was the reason behind
that? Well, a few reasons. Some of it personal.
You wanted to go there?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have 2 kids now, and my family's based in the States. So we wanted to spend some time in the States, and Mexico's pretty close. It's warm during the winter. There's so many great places to go. And my business partner kind of threw it out on the network. Like we were so amped up after the first meetup and just getting to see everybody interact and help each other out. And we were just kind of jumped the gun a little bit. I'm like, hey, we're going to do this again. And we just kind of threw out Mexico. So we're like, let's go to Mexico. And people were into it, and now we're like, oh, now we got to figure this out. So I got to give a shout out to one of our community members, Ray, who runs a website called livelingua.com. It's a huge language learning website. And he lives down in a town called Querétaro, which is this sort of I wouldn't say up and coming, but it's a town that most people haven't gone. I actually just saw on Lonely Planet published an article that it was one of the top 10 up and coming digital nomad cities or something, but I had never heard of it. And
I've never heard of it either. Interesting.
Yeah. He's been living down there for a while, and we jumped on a call with him, and he was telling me all about it and some of the different things we could do. And we were looking at Mexico City and some other places, and we're like, all right, we don't have a lot of time. And Ray like totally sold me on this town and he lives there, and he's like, oh yeah, I could reservations here and get these buses to come pick us up, take us on this hike and all this stuff. So we're like, let's just do it there. And I liked that it was kind of a place that people didn't really know. We were looking at beach towns and things like that, but it was all filled up. And we're just like, let's just do something totally different that we don't know anything about, and that it's kind of right up our alley in terms of a destination, right? We like to go to those places that are something we haven't really heard too much about, that a lot of people aren't going to. So we're just going to all go together and see what it's about, man. We're renting a big, huge house, a colonial style house, and where Ray used to have some like in-person classes because he ran a Spanish language school down there for a while. And we're going to live in this house, and everybody's going to gather at this house, and we're going to do all the co-working stuff there, and then we're going to explore in between. It's going to be awesome.
Cool. Yeah. Please send me the information about this house. I'd love to book something like that for some different things I'm doing, unrelated, but that sounds like a cool place. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, I'll let you know how it goes when we get down there. I think it looks pretty dope.
Actually, wait till you've done it in case it's a disaster.
You're like, wait a minute, it doesn't have cold showers and, but I think it's going to be nice.
It's funny with travel. Do you think it's like some people have just got it in their DNA? Because it's weird. Like, me and my wife were both really similar. Like, we love to travel. Like, I get... I can get stressed if I travel too much, but my normal situation is like if I don't travel for a month or two, I want to go somewhere, And like we do, I'm lucky that we run events with my company, Apps Events. We run events all around the world, but I justify going to the events where I want to go to the country. It's not usually by what's the most relevant, what's the most earning or best contacts to meet. Like, we're doing Mongolia and Nepal next year, and I'm like, man, I've never been to Mongolia and I want to go back to Nepal, so I'm going there. Like, I've told everyone, I need to be there, but I don't really,
No.
Someone else could go, but I just have it. So do you think it's people, you just have it in you? Like, because that's how I see it. I just like, I love to travel, but I got plenty of friends who are not like that. Or do you think it's different? People, you go to one or two places and you get a taste for it and you want to do it more. How do you think it is with people? I'm
going to answer that question in a second, but first I just want to kind of pull out something you said, Dan. Yeah. I think it's such a huge point. Please. Because you're like, I just want to go to Mongolia. Like, isn't that a lot of the fun around having a business like this, where you're like, oh, well, I don't think that's selfish at all. That's like, hey, it's your business. Like, pick the things that are going to be fun,
Yeah, maybe you're
and
right.
Go there. And like, I think that's a really exciting thing. Like, for anybody listening to this, it's like, I think sometimes it can get lost, even if you're running a successful business, where you're like, I remember I met with an entrepreneur recently in Oslo, and I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing this, podcasting workshops. I'm really interested in helping other podcasters and just trying something different. And she's like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. She's like, isn't it so cool? Like, when you're an entrepreneur, you can just like make up a thing and do it because you think it's fun. And I was like, oh yeah, thanks for the reminder. That's totally true. Like, you sometimes get wrapped up in the day to day and you forget, you can just create something. Doesn't mean it's always going to work. Yeah. But you can sure have a lot of fun. So anyway, I thought that was really cool. Like, hell yeah, go to Mongolia. Why not?
Yeah, definitely. Have you been, by the way, to Mongolia?
No, I would love to go. That's definitely on my bucket list for sure. Yes, travel in you. I've wondered about this. I don't know if you've ever seen that article where they supposedly found a travel gene in your genetic code or something. I can't quote it or speak to it intelligently, so I'm not going to try. And who knows if it's true, but I think it's an interesting question because everybody's probably going to answer that different. I don't think there's one correct answer that, it's something that's in you, and it's kind of like one of those nature versus nurture questions, right? Like, if you're like suppressed in your hometown your whole life and you want to break out, well, I mean, a lot of people find themselves in their hometowns and maybe dreaming of other places, but they don't all go somewhere or make it happen, even though, and I understand there are certain circumstances, or I'm not speaking to the, most of the world's population that live on $2 a day. I'm talking about somebody that owns an iPhone and is listening to this podcast, Exactly. But that's kind of a given. I think some of it's shaped around the experiences you have growing up, and I think how much you're exposed to it or adventure. But I've also talked to a lot of people that hadn't done much traveling growing up, and I hadn't either. But the times I did, the times I went on camping trips or different things like that, there was this sort of inner thing, like it meant more to me for some reason. And I had this inner feeling. So I do think if I was going to give a general answer, and this can't go for 100% of the population, of course, but I do think with certain people, there is some kind of inner feeling that compels them to travel. And what I think it is, ultimately, it ends up being people that it's somehow tied to their level of curiosity, right? If curiosity is a big component of their personality or is built into their genetic code, travel is sort of the most natural extension to that, right? Like what more can we do besides to fulfill our curiosity, besides try to explore our entire world and find out everything about it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. It's fascinating to me. Like, because, I think I've got a lot of friends who, like, everybody says, if you go somewhere cool, everyone says they're jealous and says they want to do it. But most people, given the opportunity, probably wouldn't go there. Even if you said, like, here's a ticket, a lot of people just find reasons not to go. It's like, I think mentally people want to go, but a lot of people, maybe they're scared or I don't know, like maybe it's a sense of adventure, maybe it's just, anxiety. I'm not sure, but a lot of people, I've seen people with the opportunities who do anything to get out of it at the last minute.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, there's some fears there that can come into play for sure. And you can blame a lot of things on that. But ultimately, I think, the fear, and then there's the other sort of personality type where they're just not prioritizing it. It's saying, I can't really make it happen because I have this, that, and the other. But they're looking at those things as excuses rather than as challenges to overcome, because when they want that boat or that other thing, they make it happen.
It's true. Yeah,
how much do you really want it?
And it's true. There's also a whole group of people who value experiences over possessions, or vice versa.
Right.
And I've been very much about the experiences, not the possessions. I mean, I own properties now, and I'm getting older, and you want to build some stability for your life. But it's kind of weird to me because I was never like that before. I mean, I really like. Even in my early 30s, all my possessions fitted in a car, Like, right. I didn't have anything else. And that was fairly, I guess it was maybe subconscious, but it was probably deliberate, I think.
Yeah, I think some of that comes through experience too. Like growing up in the States when I did, I mean, certainly there's this consumer culture. There's no doubt about it, right? So for me, touring, I had never lived out of just a suitcase and a little backpack, And then all of a sudden I found myself 8 months out of the year, 10 months out of the year, just having everything I owned with me. Now, if I didn't have that experience, would I have the same mindset today? I mean, I can't say that. I don't know, but I do know that I very quickly fell in love with this idea of just not having a lot of stuff, because that just felt way more natural of sort of a way to live. It just felt easier and lighter and better in many ways. Now, I was forced into that experience because of my job. Would I have done that voluntarily? Probably, I guess, if I'd gone traveling, and which I wanted to do anyway. But not everybody gets forced into that situation. So, this is one of those things that I love to talk about, Dan, is the transition people make from traditional, like you do this as well. You talk about the transition from employee to entrepreneur. It sounds like that's a big thing that you talk about. For me, it's the transition from whatever your life sort of regular, if you want to call it life situation, to long-term or full-time travel, because people talk a lot about the travel experiences and all the things that happen on the road, but that journey before the journey leading up to like setting yourself up for long-term travel or a gap year, whatever it is, there's so much value in that. And that's a real journey of discovery, because now you're forced to answer all these big questions about your life, right? You're like, should I actually quit my job and do this? How important is this job to me? What things should I keep, in storage that are worth paying for? Should I get rid of all my stuff? Do I even want to live here? Like, am I supposed to be with this person I'm with? All of these things just tie in. So planning a big trip or a long-term trip is life-changing in many ways. And you could almost argue, if you are planning on taking off for an extended period of time and you're really set up somewhere, there's as much value or more in all the things leading up to that trip than maybe even on the trip itself, or at least in a different way.
Sure. And it's interesting that, it obviously changes at different stages of your life as well. If you're someone like us who likes traveling, because, now I'm at the stage, I used to travel probably at least 6 to 9 months of the year. I'd be on the road, Yeah. But I found I was a person, I liked to have a home base. At certain times I didn't have a home base, and I didn't like it. It was weird because my life was no different when I was still traveling all the time, but the fact that I knew I had an apartment that I owned back in Prague was just, I don't know why, but I liked it, you know?
Sure.
But then now I think we're at the stage where a lot of people are, I don't know what the phrase is for it, but like, you know, we're spending and we're planning to spend like a few months in one place and come back to Prague. And like next year, we're going to go to Asia for 3 months. We've got a place in the Alps in Austria, you know, we're going to go there for a month in the winter. So like, you know, traveling, but then kind of basing ourselves in a few places,
Slow
which is
travel.
an interesting model people are doing now as well.
Slow travel.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Yeah. And, yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, like you're always, I used to be terrified of the idea of having a home base. Now, you know, even when I bought the place in Boulder, which is a place that I absolutely love and one of my favorite places on the planet in Colorado, I was still associating at that time having possessions or having a place with sort of negative feelings around, oh, this is going to prevent me from travel or somehow limit me. Yeah. And then I had to sort of flip my mindset and say, well, hey, look, this is setting me up in a different way.
Sure.
And, you know, I just had to look at it in a different way and understand that and how that sort of possession or thing was going to fit into my lifestyle and fuel it. And now I've changed and I have a family now, and I really value having a base and in Oslo and having that place in Colorado and trying to, you know, rent that out and keep it there and still have ties there. And it just I don't have the same feelings towards that stuff because I've changed, but I also don't think if you do it right, it's not, you know, if you're scared it's going to impede on your travels or what. I'm also not as actually, I don't want to be nomadic now. Yep. You know, I did that. I want to help other people that want to do it. But I don't, which is perfect and ironic because in order to do that and put all the amount of time I need to like put all this content out, it's really hard to do that when you're nomadic.
Yeah. But you know, it's interesting because I've gone through a lot of phases and it might change. You might find in 10 years you want to be nomadic again. And because now it's, you know, the scene's changed. It's not just people in their 20s doing it. You know, I know a couple of, I mean, you probably know a lot more than me, but I know at least 2 families who are pretty much fully nomadic, you know, with the kids and stuff as well.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah, there are tons of families doing it. And it's not for everybody, but it's certainly for some people, you know?
Now, I'm curious, like, you're doing a lot of stuff. Like, what does I love finding out people's workflow and, like, what does your week look like? Like, describe to me, like, where do you work? Do you work a structured day? Like, what projects do you work on? I'm trying to think, like, because you're doing all these different things. You've got a couple of podcasts, you're doing blog content, you've got a community, you're doing events. Like, what do you work on and how do you work? Kind of a big question.
Isn't this the hardest thing to figure out, right? I think.
Well, no, I'm sure you haven't got all the answers, but I'm just curious. Like, I love hearing from other people. Like, how do they structure their week, for example?
One thing I miss is having a more. I shouldn't say. Another thing I feared was having routines. You know, part of the allure of being a touring professional for so long was that even though we were setting up the same event and there were certain things that were the same, you're always in a different place. Things were always different. So. I like spontaneity. I never liked kind of having that many set routines. But now that I live somewhere, there are certain elements of routines that I enjoy. And I mean, you've probably heard about the 5-minute journal and all these different things where you can set up your daily
Do you want to sell more tickets to your